Well, hello, bonjour, good morning, everybody. First, let me say I'm so thrilled to be back here at Hub Ottawa. I actually used to work here for a number of years at Evidence for Democracy, so I'm thrilled to take any excuse to come back here. And I'm so thrilled to be here today for a very special reason. I'm honored to be joined here in Ottawa Centre by my fellow Ontario Liberal candidates. We've got John, Tyler, Sam, Lucille, Shabazz, Amanda, Stephen, and Tom. Thank you all so much for joining us. And of course, our very special guest, our leader, Stephen Del Duca. The past few years have been hard for everyone in our community. We've seen seniors, kids, families, healthcare workers, small business owners, everyone has been struggling. Stephen comprend à quel point ces dernières années ont été difficiles pour les Ontariens. Stephen is proposing bold, creative solutions to these urgent problems. He's offering voters a choice this election. Do we want a conservative government that is going to continue to cut our essential services and only help the rich get richer? Or do we want an Ontario Liberal government that is going to invest in people to make Ontario a place to grow again? I know that's what I want. So please join me in welcoming the next Premier of Ontario, Stephen Del Duca.
Well, good morning. Bonjour tout le monde. I'm so thrilled to be here with all of you in Ottawa, in our nation's capital, the second largest city in this incredible province of ours. To be here in Ottawa, to be here in particular this morning in Ottawa Centre, I want to begin, of course, by thanking Katie Gibbs for her introductory comments, but I also want to thank Katie and the rest of the phenomenal Ontario Liberal Ottawa team, all of the women and men that you see standing here today, who for months, and in some cases years, have been working with such dedication and such passion and such motivation to make sure that Ottawa, the hard-working families, the small business owners, the students, the seniors, that everybody in this city has real support, has real champions, real advocates at Queen's Park. So to Katie and the rest of the Ontario Liberal Ottawa team, I want to say thank you. Thank you for helping us put together a compelling and relatable and forward-looking and fair and fully costed platform. Ideas that will literally help people right across Ottawa in their day-to-day lives. You know, as Katie said just a moment ago, over the past 4 years, it's been tough across this province. But of course, in particular, over the past 2 with COVID. Now, I know that there are other party leaders in this race, other people running to be Premier, of course, in particular, Doug Ford. You look at his plan, you look at his platform, you look at what he is saying out on the campaign trail each and every day, it's like he wants to pretend that COVID never happened. It's like he doesn't want to believe that people here in Ottawa and across Ontario, many are still struggling. And I say this recognizing that the 15 million people who call Ontario home, the roughly 1 million who live here in Ottawa, that we are a strong and resilient people. It is how we work together to endure our toughest moments. But there is no doubt about the fact that people here in Ottawa and across Ontario need help. They need support. They need a government at Queen's Park that's on their side. And they need leaders who understand that the responsibility of leading is to show up, Now, I know, like you do, that when this incredible community, a number of months ago, faced such a difficult moment, just as parts of the province were starting to reopen at that stage, when this city, the second largest city in Ontario, our nation's capital, was under siege from an illegal occupation taking place on Parliament Hill, near Parliament Hill, right here in the downtown core. You know, like I know, your neighbors know, like I know, like our team knows, that Doug Ford was nowhere to be seen. That Doug Ford chose to go snowmobiling instead of being here for the people and the businesses of this community. Now, I think that one of the biggest frauds perpetrated by Doug Ford in the 2018 election campaign was when he said that he was for the people. It's not true. And the people in this community know, in particular, he's not for the people of Ottawa. And neither are his local MPPs. Because in those moments when that help from Queen's Park was necessary, was expected, should have been flowing, they didn't step up. He disappeared, they didn't step up. This community, this city was abandoned. And that's not what Ottawa needs. That's not what Ottawa deserves. And this new Ontario Liberal team has worked so hard to make sure that we have a platform, again, of compelling ideas that will make life better right here in Ottawa. And we are determined. This team, you see the talent, you see the drive, you see the experience. We are determined to deliver for Ottawa, not on the fourth year of a mandate, not by way of press releases and empty words, but by actually showing up starting on day one with our sleeves rolled up and our heads down, prepared to do the heavy lifting that Doug Ford doesn't have the interest in doing for Ottawa or for Ontario. This team knows what it takes to deliver for this community in all of the critically important areas that need help and support right now. And that's why I'm so thrilled to be standing alongside this entire team to talk today about the Ontario Liberal platform specifically for Ottawa. I'm going to highlight some of the key elements of this plan, but again, all of these details are included in the platform that we released. We call it a place to grow. Because frankly, I want this province, I want this city, I want this region to be a place to grow safely, a place to grow older, a place to grow your family, a place to grow sustainably, a place to grow together for the future. There are a number of elements that we've included in the platform, but the ones that I want to highlight today, commitments that I am so proud that we are making for Ottawa. In no particular order, let's start with healthcare. An Ontario Liberal government will build the Ottawa Hospital Civic Campus by 2028, and we will also build the one-door four-care hub at CHEO. That's number one, healthcare. An Ontario Liberal government will provide 50% in funding from the province to support the City of Ottawa's regional transit plan, including all of the things that are required to help this community grow in a sustainable way. Of course, applying the lessons learned from the first two stages of building transit in this incredible city. An Ontario Liberal government will support our seniors, our parents and grandparents who here in Ottawa and across Ontario gave us everything, sacrificed and were dedicated and delivered and built the province and the country that we call home. And that's why in our home care guarantee plan, there will be at least 26,000 seniors right here in Ontario, in Ottawa, 26,000 new seniors here in Ottawa who will be able to access home care so they can have the safety and the good health and the dignity at home for life, because that's what they deserve. We know that there's an affordability crisis across the board, including in housing. The Ontario Liberal plan for Ottawa specifically, over the next 10 years, will build at least 10,000 new affordable units of housing, including housing for the Francophone community. So important at this point in time. And lastly, I'll highlight from our plan that we will provide $8 million for a new building for MIFO, so that Francophone services can be provided for the arts, culture, and community sectors right here in Ottawa and across Ontario. Again, these are just some of the highlights that are in our platform that's specific for Ottawa. But I want to make sure one thing is abundantly clear. The words are important. The plan is extremely important, and it is a plan, again, that is fair and forward-looking and fully costed. It is responsible, it is thoughtful, it is caring, it is compassionate. But the words only get us so far. What gets us all the way over the line and moves us from simple words to actually delivering what the people of Ottawa need is the team. The women and men who have stepped forward in every riding right here in Ottawa and the Ottawa region. The women and men who have poured their heart and soul into developing this platform that will help Ottawa, help the families, help the small businesses, help the students, help the seniors. The team that has helped us develop our 19-point pledge for affordability. We know here in Ontario, and certainly here in Ottawa, that under the past 4 years, everything in your cost of living has skyrocketed under the Ford Conservatives. That's why in our 19-point affordability pledge, we have Buck a Ride province-wide, $1 transit fares on OC Transpo and municipal and provincial transit systems province-wide, literally to save hundreds, if not thousands of dollars for you each and every year. It's why we've included an old age security top-up of $1,000 for Ontario's and Ottawa's most vulnerable seniors. It's why we've committed to take the HST off prepared foods under $20. It's why we're going to bring back meaningful rent control and take before and after school care for our kids and our families who use it and take it down to $10 a day, just like we're going to deliver $10 a day licensed childcare in partnership with our federal friends. All of these ideas, taken together will be delivered upon by this incredible team because they are working hard, because they understand what Ottawa needs. They understand what Ontario needs. They have your interests at heart, and working together, we will guarantee that Ontario will truly be a place to grow. Thank you very much. Be happy to take any questions you might have.
Okay. So we have reporters on the ground today. We also have reporters on the line. So I just asked reporters on the ground just to come up to the microphone so folks on the Zoom call can hear you. We'll start with questions here, and then I'll move it over to Will. Go ahead.
Thank you. Lee Berthiaume from the Canadian Press. Thanks for talking to us today.
No problem.
You've criticized the NDP for wanting to cancel the gas tax cut, saying such a move will hurt the middle class. Do you think keeping the tax cut is a better investment of the associated $600 million than spending it on health care and education?
Well, first of all, there's no getting around the fact that we are in a fundamental and very painful affordability crisis for families here in Ottawa and families right across Ontario. I hear it everywhere I go. Literally, over the past 4 years, in particular the last couple of years, the cost of everything is going up. So, of course, I go grocery shopping almost every Saturday morning for my family back home in my home community of Vaughan. I see it at the grocery store, prices going up. We see it, of course, at the pumps. We know the cost of renting or buying a home under Doug Ford has skyrocketed. We know all of this. People are hurting. People are struggling. And I don't think reasonable, responsible, and competent leadership turns a blind eye to that. I think we respond in kind by saying, we're going to make your life more affordable. And by the way, when we, as Ontario Liberals will do, it's the 18th point in our 19-point affordability pledge. When we take 5.7 cents per litre off the gas tax and 5.3 cents per litre off the fuel tax, it's not just going to make life more affordable at the pumps, it's going to help throughout the rest of the supply chain. So the cost of food will also come down. There's a whole series of things in our pledge, all 19 points, that go right at the heart of the affordability crisis. But let me also be crystal clear. We are the only party, and I am the only person running for Premier, who prepared and put together and released a fully costed platform from day one. From day one. At my last count, the NDP is on their 6th revision of their platform in less than 4 weeks. 6th revision, maybe it's the 7th, in 4 weeks. They're making it up as they go along. You know who's been doing that for the last 4 years? Doug Ford. Cuts and chaos and havoc. I don't want any more of that. And I think in particular, as Ontarians are struggling, there's no way that they want to embrace that kind of risky option. So we will make life more affordable, but our plan will also invest $1 billion over 2 years to clear the surgical and diagnostic backlog. Over 6 years, we're going to hire up 100,000 new healthcare workers. We're going to scrap Bill 124. We're going to do a lot more to make sure that Ontario's healthcare system, including right here in Ottawa, is strong and exceptional and resilient. So our plan, which has remained constant and is fully costed, will be able to accomplish both goals.
As a follow-up, you support in principle a carbon tax. How can you justify artificially artificially lowering gas prices while supporting a carbon tax?
So number one, I'm just going to go back to what I said a second ago. We're in the midst of an affordability crisis that I don't believe we've seen perhaps in my lifetime. Perhaps. That's number one. I think it's important for leaders to respond to the pain and the angst and the anxiety that families here in Ottawa and beyond are facing on a day-to-day basis. That's why for that 6-month window starting July 1st, Ontario Liberals will make life more affordable in a series of ways, but the July 1st starting point is the reduction in the price at the pumps by reducing the fuel tax and the gas tax. But secondly, I'm also really proud of what we've put forward with help from candidates like Katie Gibbs, who has a background in science and understands this, and Lucille Collard, who served as our environment critic, and so many others who've worked hard on our plan for sustainability. And if you look at our targets on dealing with the climate crisis, you see that by 2030, because we're going to toughen the emissions performance standards, because we're going to plant 800 million trees, because we're going to build 5 new provincial parks, because we're going to deliver buck a ride province-wide that'll take at least 400,000 cars off our roads, that we will cut our emissions 50% below 05 levels by 2030, and we'll be net zero by 2050. And again, unlike the other parties, in particular Ms. Horvath, I've not had to go back to the drawing board and make multiple revisions to my uncosted or poorly costed platform. It's all there for you to see in black and white. And all of the numbers are there as well. So we will achieve our emissions reductions targets, cut in half by 2030, net zero by 2050, but we will also not be tone deaf to the affordability crisis and pressures Ontario families are facing.
The NDP have proposed regulating gas prices. Is that something you would in any way support, especially if, after the 6 months when this tax cut kind of expires, inflation continues?
Look, I've heard that commitment from the NDP, I think, from the last 2 or maybe 3 election campaigns. We know in parts of Canada, like for example in the East Coast, they have tried efforts to regulate gas prices. It doesn't actually work. It doesn't actually work. Number one. Number two, in the private members' legislation the NDP have introduced on this topic in the past, it's not really regulating gas prices. It's effectively putting a weekly cap on gas prices as opposed to an overall way of stopping gas prices from going up. So look, the NDP is going to continue to engage, I suspect, in revising their platform, doing that kind of stuff. What I know is that we are going to make sure that the affordability crisis is confronted head on. All 19 points in our affordability pledge go right at the heart of it. Cost of food, cost of housing, support for seniors, cost of early learning and childcare, cost of public transit. I mean, all of it is right there for people to see. And we are the only team that has that forward-looking, fair, and fully costed plan that has remained stable and constant from the very beginning. And it's a plan that we will act upon starting on day 1 of taking office.
Last question. Will you stay on as leader if you don't win your seat?
Well, first of all, I'm going to win my seat in Vaughan Warbridge on June the 2nd, first of all. It's the community I've lived in for more than 3 decades. I was so proud to represent Vaughan in the legislature for 6 years, and in that time, I helped deliver the funding for Vaughan's hospital that's now open. I helped bring more transit service. We opened a subway station, 2 subway stations in the community under my time. We brought a 10-bed residential hospice with a lot of help from my good friend John Fraser, who worked closely with me on that to deliver that in his responsibility, with his responsibility at the time in healthcare. We did so much in my community, but most importantly, it is the community that my wife and I have chosen to live in, to raise our kids in. I know my neighbors. I know that they're facing an affordability crisis. I know that they want our kids, our seniors, our healthcare, our environment to be strong, and they know that 4 more years of the Ford Conservatives will only hold them back and drag us down, and they don't want that. So I'm just going to keep working hard, both locally in my community, here in Ottawa, and right across Ontario to deliver for the people of this province.
Hello.
Morning.
Joanne Caminello,
Hey, Joanne.
CBC. Hi. So I want to talk a little bit about transit, the transit promise. You know, yesterday or earlier this week, Ottawa said they have to hire 300 more bus drivers because the new rules of a half-an-hour break means that, you know, they've missed a lot of routes. And we hear this from other places too, that they want their transit systems to be better. The NDP are promising to spend just a little bit more than you folks over 4 years, but they're going to give that money to the municipalities to perhaps lower fares somewhat, but also to improve transit systems. why do you not put your money that way as opposed to subsidizing riders for the first 2 years?
So first of all, we're doing both. We're doing both because as a former transportation minister, I don't believe it should be either or. So in addition to what municipalities like Ottawa already receive from the existing transit supporting gas tax program, our plan will provide an additional $375 million each and every year to communities like Ottawa and the others that have public transit to go directly towards supporting existing and expanding transit service options. But secondly, we cannot, I refuse, in fact, to turn a blind eye to the affordability crisis that's confronting people right now in this province. We have seen ridership numbers on pretty much every transit service drop through the floor during COVID. And why? Well, because people were working from home. And a lot of other people who weren't working from home were fearful about getting onto crowded public transit with an airborne virus. So the ridership numbers are low. When the ridership numbers are low, that is bad for our quality of life. It is bad for keeping our environment clean. It's bad for confronting the climate crisis. And it's bad for congestion on our roads, because the alternative, of course, is to take the car. So I want those cars off the roads. I want people to get back on public transit. I want people to know they'll have a leader and a team and a government at Queen's Park that will make their life easier and more affordable. And that's why we have chosen, in addition to supporting transit expansions, like here in Ottawa with 50% funding for Stage 3 of Ottawa's Regional Transit Plan, we're also investing the additional $375 million, while within 100 days of taking office, dropping the cost of taking transit to $1 per ride or $40 for a monthly pass. I think it's a comprehensive plan that will help, and I'm really proud of it.
But, you know, at the same time, what keeps ridership down is buses not going where you want to go, right? So people are, especially a city like Ottawa, Toronto has a bit more of a network, but Ottawa, big sprawling city. Why not put more of that money into it, into the actual system as opposed to the fare as well? Would you extend, I mean, if having the fare, a low fare is so good, would you extend it beyond 2 years?
So first of all, I agree with the idea that we need more service and we need to expand service. So again, that's why, in addition to the $375 million, when you look at our transit plan, I think it's in our sustainability chapter on our platform, you see a commitment to a series of transit expansion projects, again, including 50% provincial funding for Stage 3 of the City of Ottawa's Regional Transit Plan. So again, big believer in expanding transit and supporting it financially directly at both the provincial and municipal level. Want to go at the affordability crisis by making life so much easier and more affordable for people in Ottawa who will or want to take public transit. And in terms of what happens beyond January 2024, look, unlike Doug Ford, I don't believe in command and control and dictating to municipalities from Queen's Park. And that's what Doug Ford has done for 4 years, whether we're talking about him interfering in local elections and regional elections, whether we're talking about the way that he's abused the minister's zoning order power over the past 2 years in particular, a series of other examples. I would want to work with Ottawa's mayor and city council and the rest of our municipal partners, taking a look at, has ridership recovered by January 2024? What does it look like? How successful is the program? Before I make a decision about going forward. But let me be really clear, as a former transportation minister and someone who loves public transit and wants all of us to take more of it, I will do whatever I can to make sure that we continue to make life more affordable, especially as it relates to taking public transit.
And on a final local question on the Civic Hospital.
Yeah.
There are folks, some people here are questioning the location. When you say it would be built by 2028, would it be built at the Dow's Lake location right now, or that it's set at now?
Yeah, look, I think especially given what we've gone through with COVID over the past couple of years, we everywhere in Ottawa and beyond, we need to get on with building. We need to get on with building a public healthcare system that provides the spaces, the beds, the staff that we need here in Ottawa and beyond. And so this idea of moving away from plans and starting over again and again, moving away from plans, it slows everything down. And I don't think here in Ottawa or beyond we can afford to be slowed down when it comes to building an exceptional and resilient healthcare system and hospital system. But on healthcare, I didn't make this clear enough in my opening remarks, so let me just take a step back and say this. You know, I talked briefly about the $1 billion we'll invest over 2 years to clear the surgical and diagnostic backlog. I just want to be crystal clear. We are going to clear that backlog through our public healthcare and public hospital system. One of the things that I think is deeply concerning for me and many Ontarians is that Doug Ford's own health minister back in February, when talking about the surgical and diagnostic backlog, stressed that they were going to prioritize private hospitals to clear that backlog. So I didn't quite say it clearly enough in the opening. I just want to make it crystal clear. Our plan is about building up our public healthcare and public hospital system here in Ottawa and across Ontario.
Just checking if there's any last questions on the floor. Yes.
Sorry, Blair Crawford from The Citizen. A quick question about your transit commitment. I'm just wondering, does that stay in place regardless of what we learn at the coming inquiry into the earlier construction projects?
So that's why I specifically said applying the lessons learned from what took place with stages 1 and 2. And again, look, I think ultimately, whether we're talking about Ottawa, and I know it's been tough on a lot of Ottawa residents, what they've seen occur with transit, understandable that there are concerns. I think we need to get some answers about how we can do better going forward. And so I think we need transit systems that work for the communities where they're operating. So if you happen to have cold weather, the system has to be able to work in cold weather, and the province needs to work with our municipal partners to make sure that our collective procurement process delivers the outcome that people here in Ottawa and beyond deserve. Thank you.
Hello.
Hey.
Remy Otier, Radio Canada. I have 2 questions. You say you want to prioritize Ottawa. How do you think your party will differ in the way it will help or give to Ottawa if you have a mandate compared to what the Progressive Conservative have been doing in the last 4 years?
Sure. I mean, you think about the illegal occupation, because that to me is such a flashpoint, such an important moment in time. When people in this community, I mean, literally were invaded. When the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier and the Terry Fox statue were desecrated. When there were hateful symbols all over Parliament Hill and nearby. And then day after day after day, restaurants and other small businesses were under siege, couldn't open. People were afraid. People who lived downtown were afraid. And I saw it firsthand. I was here several days after the whole thing started. Katie and I, we sat down with some restaurant owners and some small business people, some in tears, because as their colleagues around the rest of the province were reopening, they were still stuck shut down because of what was taking place here. And where was Doug Ford? Where was Doug? I was able to get here. Where was Doug Ford? He didn't show up. It took him 48 hours before he put out a half-hearted tweet talking about those hateful symbols and what was taking place here. That's not leadership. That's not showing up. He literally did not show up. I have, in all of my years around politics and in politics, I have never, ever, I never even thought or imagined I would ever see a premier who, in the midst of that kind of action, that kind of illegal occupation taking place in a city in the province that leader is supposed to be representing, would turn his back, would go into hiding, would literally choose to go snowmobiling at his cottage instead of being here for you. So the number one difference is that we will show up, and not when it suits us, and not when the sun is shining and people are happy, although we'll be here for that too, but when it matters most, when the chips are down and the stakes are high. So whether that's me as leader or premier or this team, because let me just be crystal clear about this, while Doug Ford went into hiding, his local MPPs did nothing. They didn't stand up in the legislature, they didn't yell and scream, they didn't hold him to account in their own caucus room from what we understand about what needed to be done. So we will show up. You can see that in our plan, you can see that in our dedication, and I believe that past behavior helps to indicate future performance. So I came to Ottawa in the midst of that occupation, and I met with small business owners, and so did our team. And we proposed solutions at Queen's Park to help make life better for people in this community who were facing that horrible, horrible time while Doug Ford went into hiding. That is the starkest difference between how we lead and how they go into hiding.
And one last question. According to a new poll released by Radio Canada and Ipsos, the Progressive Conservative leader is favored amongst Francophones, is seen as a better leader to tackle, including the cost of life. And there's a statistical equality in intentions of voting between the Liberals and the PC with Francophones. How do you react to this poll?
Well, first of all, let me say there are 13 days to go in this election campaign, and this is literally why we have election campaigns. This is literally why we do it, because we are putting forward the team and the plan that will help all Ontarians, including those living in Ottawa, and Francophone Ontarians as well. I think about the exceptional work that Lucille Collard and Amanda Simard and so many of our other candidates put into our platform, specifically targeting more support and help for Ontario's Francophone community, and it shows. It shows in the ideas that are included in our plan for Ottawa and our plan for Ontario. And I believe over the next 13 days, Francophone voters and all Ontarians will continue to see that we have momentum, especially coming out of the leaders' debate, that we are the clear and only alternative to 4 more years of being held down and dragged backwards by the Ford Conservatives. So we're just going to keep working hard.
So you're not worried that Francophones that have traditionally favored the Liberals seem to be backing away?
Look at this team I'm standing with. How could anybody be worried standing with this kind of team and putting out the kind of plan that we are? But we don't take anything for granted. We never have. I never have. I learned from my parents and grandparents. There are no shortcuts to success in life. It is literally about hard work, but every single day. So over the next 13 days, we'll continue to make our case, if I can put it that way, to Francophone voters, to the rest of Ontario about why we are their best option. And I believe they've already started to respond favorably and that they will continue to do so. Thank you.
I think that's it on the floor, so we're going to go to the line. Over to you, Will.
Okay, just reminders, reporters on the line to raise your hand using the Zoom function, and I'll add you to the queue for a question. The first question is Richard Southern from City News. Go ahead, Richard.
Morning, Mr. Del Duca.
Morning, Richard.
It's come to light that a Liberal candidate for Renfrew, Nipissing, Pembroke, Oliver Jacob, is apparently a member of a Facebook group called Stop Islamization of America, which many have described as an Islamophobic group. I'm wondering if that gives you any pause, sir.
So I can't make any comment on that specific point, Richard, but I do know that Oliver is someone who is a strong believer in publicly funded education. He serves as a school trustee, if I'm not mistaken. He is someone who I know is working very hard on his community. And I know that people who live and work in Renfrew, Nipissing, Pembroke, just like here in Ottawa, they want to see the affordability crisis confronted. They want to make sure that public health care is properly supported and that it's exceptional and resilient. They want to make sure that our seniors are protected. So our entire Ontario Liberal team, all of the candidates, including the group that you see with me here today in Ottawa, we are focused on one thing, making life easier and more affordable for Ontarians every single step of the way.
In general, do you think being a member of a questionable group on Facebook should be enough to disqualify someone from running for an election?
I'll tell you what I think. I think that in general, when I look at the candidates who aren't simply running for Doug Ford, but are actually serving in his caucus, 2 of whom were appointed as parliamentary assistants, one to education and the other the member for Brantford. I look at what they've done, what they've been engaged in, and they're still running for Mr. Ford. I look at the Ontario NDP and I see that for many, many, many weeks after it came to light that Andrea Horwath, star candidate in Ajax, had in fact engaged in inappropriate behavior supporting the honoring of someone who was a Nazi soldier during the Second World War, that she stood by him. Now, regardless of all of that, we have a rigorous process that's produced an exceptionally strong team of talented candidates who are all so committed to the Ontario Liberal plan, a place to grow, including our 19-point plan for affordability. So buck a ride province-wide, more support for seniors, students who need help every step of the way, $10 a day before and after school care. These are real savings, dropping the price at the pumps. Unlike Doug Ford, we're not going to wait till the 4th year and then put out press releases claiming we understand it. We're going to start the job of making life easier and more affordable for Ontarians on day 1.
Okay, your next question is from Colin DeMello from Global News. Go ahead, Colin.
Hey, good morning, Mr. Del Duca.
Morning,
The topic
Colin.
today is violent crime. Just wanted to know, we know that a lot of guns are smuggled across the Canada-U.S. border. Your party has proposed to ban handguns, but what would your party do, or can your party do, to prevent those illegal handguns from crossing the border and entering our province?
Yeah, it's such a great point. I mean, you are correct. We see right across this province more and more stories of things like carjackings, for example, at gunpoint, people not feeling safe. This came up yesterday when I was in another community in Mississauga. I heard directly from people in the community who are actually very concerned about what's taking place. It's one of the reasons that one of the first things that I announced in this election campaign was the Ontario Liberal plan to build in more community safety by delivering a handgun ban here in this province in partnership with the federal government, first federal government, I think, ever, that has been quite clear that they want to move in this direction. They want to empower provinces and territories. They want to provide funding support to help make a handgun ban real. So really excited about that. But you are correct. There still are a lot of guns that do flow in from outside of Ontario's borders. It could be international borders like the US. It could be interprovincial borders. That's why we need to continue to work closely with the federal government, with our neighboring provincial partners, and properly resource and fund law enforcement to go at the issue of the gun smuggling at the same time that we ban handguns. And Ontario Liberals are committed to getting handguns banned in this province.
Thank you. Is this a jurisdictional issue? Is this all on the federal government and the CBSA to try to, tighten up the border, or is there something you think that the provincial government could actually do to, whether it's regulations or legislation, to prevent the flow of those handguns from coming across the border?
Well, look, there's no doubt, of course, that the federal government has a significant role to play, but I believe it's about the partnerships. You know, the law enforcement at the municipal and provincial level, of course, with the OPP falls under the province, making sure that there's enough support there, resources there. Our plan calls for supporting the hiring of new law enforcement officers across this province, making sure that the new hires are actually reflective of all of Ontario's diversity. Again, I talked about the handgun ban, and proudly so. It's something that we will deliver on. And at the same time, working with our federal partners, there's a lot of expertise and knowledge that does get shared already, but doing what we can to resource that properly so that people do understand that we are doing everything we can to stop the flow of illegal guns into the province. But can I just say one more thing about the handgun ban? We have learned with real examples, including one that took place this past March in the city of Toronto, where two men were randomly gunned down by a legal handgun, or at least by an owner of handguns. When the police did their investigation, they found an arsenal of legal guns in his possession. So I know that illegal guns are a huge problem, but we cannot turn a blind eye the way that Doug Ford does and will continue to, because he's very close to the gun lobby. We cannot turn a blind eye to the need for a handgun ban. It's why we're going to do both.
Okay, your next question is from Cynthia Mulligan from City News. Go ahead, Cynthia.
Good morning.
Morning, Cynthia.
Good morning. I noticed in your opening remarks, I know you're in Ottawa and you're targeting Ottawa seats, but you are going pretty hard on Doug Ford and his record and not a mention of the NDP. Are you changing tactics in the second half of this campaign? We've just hit the halfway mark. Are you going to lay off the NDP and go harder on the PCs now?
Well, look, I think at every single step along the way, as I have been since I became leader, doing my best to constructively hold Doug Ford and his team to account, which is part of my job. But all the way along, we've also, as Ontario Liberals, been proposing, not just opposing, but proposing. And so now we've seen the sort of totality of Doug Ford's 4 years in office. And then we see a budget coming from his government that has no real plan to move the province forward. And now every single time I hear what Doug Ford says on the campaign trail, what I saw him talk about in the leaders' debate just a few days ago, it's like he wants to pretend COVID never happened. He just wants to skate right past it. He wants to presume that everyone in Ottawa and across Ontario is doing just fine. And you know why Doug Ford thinks that? Because his rich buddies are doing fine. The people he wants to make richer when he privatizes healthcare and education, when he builds Highway 413 at a waste of $10 billion instead of investing that in people's day-to-day lives, like in education the way that we would, he makes it abundantly clear that he is the wrong person for this job. And I'm going to continue to take the fight to Doug Ford, because there is a stark choice in this election campaign. 4 more years of making the richest richer and privatizing everything under the sun because he's delivered cuts and chaos to core public services, so being dragged backwards and being pushed down and held down by the Ford Conservatives, or 4 years of going forward with a fully costed and responsible and competent plan from the new Ontario Liberal team to make this province a place to grow. That is the stark choice that exists right now, and I'm going to continue to remind voters that 4 years ago on the campaign trail, Doug Ford told everybody he was for the people. It's still the biggest fraud that he perpetrated in the course of that campaign, because he's not for the people. He's not for the people when it comes to the affordability crisis. He's not for the people in our publicly funded schools or public healthcare system. He's not for the people who live here in Ottawa, who he abandoned in their most dire moment of need. So Doug Ford's going to keep doing what he's doing. Ontario Liberals will stay focused on delivering real progress for people in this province.
Thank you.
Thanks, Cynthia.
Shortly before the election, before the writs, Justin Trudeau and Doug Ford had many news conferences together, side by side, looking very friendly. In fact, Justin Trudeau at one point introduced Doug Ford as his friend. He's been largely invisible, has been invisible when it comes to this election campaign. Why isn't he anywhere near you or supporting you or giving you any nod whatsoever?
Sorry, when you said invisible for a second ago, I thought for a moment you were talking about Doug Ford, because I think he's effectively been invisible for 4 years when it matters most. But by the time you got to the end of the question, I understood what you were referring to. Look, in every single riding across this province, including in my own, our federal friends, my federal counterpart, and many others, they're out there knocking on doors. There's a lot of, I'll call it crossover in terms of our volunteer ranks between our federal and provincial party. And when I saw well over 100 Liberal volunteers in Ottawa, West Nepean at Villa Marconi last night, and Sam Balasar's riding, I saw all those people there. I see them helping out in federal campaigns. The federal government knows that whether it's early learning and childcare, or the confronting the climate crisis, or supporting workers and their families, or public health care, that they will have a genuine and authentic partner in an Ontario Liberal government. But I've also stressed, including at that very last press conference or announcement that the Prime Minister and Doug Ford did in Windsor right before the election started. To me, the Prime Minister is governing and has been governing, but Doug Ford's been campaigning for almost a full year. He hasn't been showing up to do the heavy lifting around governing this province the way that we've needed it. He's been so focused on his own polls, so focused on saving his own political skin, and that is frankly just the way that Doug Ford and his team go about the game that they play. But it's not a game for the people of Ontario, people who are struggling, people who need real relief, the kind of relief and progress they will get from an Ontario Liberal government.
Okay, your next question, and this will be the last question, is Rob Ferguson from the Toronto Star. Go ahead, Rob.
I think you're on mute, Rob.
Okay, now I'm unmuted, right?
Yes, you are.
Okay, fat fingers this morning. I just wanted to get your take on the NDP promise that came out yesterday, which I don't believe was in their plan, to take tolls off trucks and commercial traffic on the 407, and to pay for that by using the by collecting the missed usage penalty on the 401 from COVID or 407 when it wasn't used very much. I'm not sure how recoverable that money is, and this is just to get trucks off the 401 and whatnot, and not for regular ordinary drivers. So just if you want to give us your take on that.
I mean, it's so deeply disappointing to know that after 4 years of cuts and chaos and havoc and frankly a circus-like atmosphere from the Ford Conservatives, because they've never had a plan. They've never had a plan. It is so deeply disappointing to see that the Ontario NDP have decided to take a page out of that approach, in particular at this moment in time. This idea that you can put together a campaign plan and kind of write it on the back of a napkin, coming up with it hour by hour, day by day, that to me is, first of all, irresponsible. And secondly, given how people in this province are still struggling, and given what we've had to go through, the idea that the NDP think it's good enough to continue to put people in this province at risk by offering up, again, back of the napkin, arbitrary ideas, trying to pluck the latest, the latest thing that they think perhaps might grab people's attention. It's just shocking to me that, with the time that they've had, with the listening they should have done, because we've been doing it, that they've now revised their platform Geez, Rob, I've lost count. 5 times, 6 times, 7 times in 4 weeks. I suspect that's going to continue to happen over the course of the next 13 days, but it is not genuine. It is not authentic. It is not well thought out. And after the 4 years of cuts and chaos we've had from Doug Ford, we cannot afford, we simply cannot afford the risk of embracing an equally poorly planned, written on the back of a napkin plan from Andrea Horwath and the Ontario NDP. Ontarians want a real plan. They want it to be responsible and competent and fully costed from day one, so that they can hold their next government, their next Ontario Liberal government, to account for what we're committing to. And so NDP, they're playing the same game Doug has for the last 4 years. I know that over the next 13 days, Ontarians will reject both options because the risk is far too high.
All right, a different follow-up. On your own campaign, Stephen, you've mostly concentrated Greater Toronto, Hamilton. You've been to Ottawa. I guess this is the second time. I don't think you've been west of London. So are you just abandoning the Southwest since you don't have any seats there? Do you not see any hope there? And what about other parts of the province you haven't been to?
Well, look, I've been to, this is my second time in Ottawa. I've been to Kingston. I've been to Peterborough. I'm going to be in Glengarry, Prescott, Russell in just a few hours. I'm heading north tomorrow and over the weekend. Really excited about doing that. I have been to the Southwest and, of course, in the GTA. So I've been all over Ontario, and with 13 days to go, I look forward to being in even more parts of this province because the momentum is growing around the Ontario Liberal plan and the Ontario Liberal team. And so whether that's in the Southwest or across the rest of this province, people are responding. And they're responding because they know that this team has the energy, has the plan, and has the capacity to deliver, in particular on the affordability crisis for them. And they don't want 4 more years of Ford pulling us down and pulling us back. And they don't want the risk, the unnecessary risk, coming from a desperate NDP. They want real progress, and they know that the choice is theirs, the choice is clear, and that Ontario Liberals have their back.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, Rob.
Okay, and that was your last question. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.